107 teams to go in my road to predict all 131 teams this college football off season. We're moving on now to the Penn State Nittany Lions. And guys, this is the team that just has not been that impressive over the past couple of seasons. It's a team that a lot of people are trying to expect Penn State to, take that next step and put themselves back on the map in 2022. They definitely have a lot of experience and a lot of talent coming back. So can this Penn State team find a way to put themselves back on the college football map in 2022? Or will this be another mediocre year for the Nittany Lions? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome to my channel. And I'm predicting all 131 teams this college football season, which means I'm predicting your favorite team. So leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell so you know when your favorite team gets uploaded. Couple things before we get into the video. I turned up my mic volume a little bit because I've been getting some comments recently that my mic volume is too low, so I've turned it up a little bit. You guys can let me know now if it's too loud, and I'll turn it down. But yeah, so there you go. Mic volume is up. And then I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bad. My throat has been killing me lately, so sorry if I sounded a little off, but going to record nonetheless. I feel up to it. So, and now, to Penn State fans in this video, before we jump into it, you guys are going to know a lot more about your favorite team than me. So, if you feel like I missed something or you want to add something onto the video, Penn State fans, leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to read through them. Penn State in 2022, 2021, this is my fourth-ranked team in the Big Ten coming into next year. I feel like they are going to be much improved. They were 7-5 last season, 4-5 in conference play. And this is the team last year that, again, was just kind of mediocre. Again, right? On the offensive side of things, you definitely want to see this offense get better if you're a Nittany Lion fan. 376 yards and around 25 points per game. They actually were not very good at rushing the football, which is unusual for Penn State. They usually have some pretty good running backs back in that room, but it was the passing game that kind of dominated things last year. Of course, with Jahan Dotson back there. But then on the defensive side, 344 yards and 16.8 points per game allowed. The 16.8 points per game allowed were third in the Big Ten this past season. So good numbers on defense. You want to see that offense get better in order for Penn State to maybe start winning some of those closer and more important football games this season. Looking at some of the talent that is leaving, you got Taquan Roberson gone, was just kind of a backup quarterback, transferred out of the program. Couple pretty solid running backs leaving. That's Noah Cain and John Lovett. Although between the two of them, only around 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, all of them going to Noah Cain. Again, this is a run game for Penn State that was not as prevalent as it probably should have been last year. Again, only around 110 yards per game on the ground last year, so definitely got to step it up in that regard, but I'll talk about some players they have coming back. I've already talked about them, but Jahan Dotson was a beast last year, 1,182 yards with 12 touchdowns last year. So for Jahan Dotson, for this Penn State team, Jahan Dotson probably going to be a really good player in the NFL, but Penn State's got to be able to fill in that hole. But the talent leaving this defensive side, you got Arnold Ebiketie, had 9.5 sacks last year with 62 tackles. Jesse Luketa, a phenomenal linebacking talent. You also got Brandon Smith, Ellis Brooks, who were your 2 leading tacklers last year. Jaquan Brisker had 2 picks last year. Tariq Castro-Field, 7 passes defended last year. Just lots of really, really good talent leaving this Penn State defense. And they're going to need a lot of guys to step it up this year and fill in that production gaps. But they got a lot of experience coming back, I will say that. Quarterback Sean Clifford feels like he's been in a Penn State Nittany Lion uniform forever, but he is coming back. 3,107 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions last year, throwing at around a 61% clip. Was also their 4th leading rusher last year with 163 yards and a couple touchdowns on the ground as well. But for Penn State, having Sean Clifford, that experience of a quarterback coming back is huge. Now, how good Sean Clifford is and how good you guys think he is, you guys can debate in the comment section below. But I do think that Sean Clifford, I think in past years we've seen the best that Sean Clifford can offer. But if Sean Clifford can play like that throughout the entirety of this next season, Penn State could find themselves right back in to Big Ten contention. It could happen. In the running back room, you got your leading rusher, K'Von Lee, 530 yards and 2 touchdowns last year, but also Devin Ford comes back, who figures to play a bigger role this upcoming season. Parker Washington, Keandre Lambert-Smith are two of the leading receivers coming back, of course, besides Jahan Dotson. 820 yards, 4 touchdowns for Washington. For Lambert-Smith, 521 yards and 3 touchdowns. You also got Brenton Strange, the tight end, 225 yards and 3 touchdowns last year coming back. But they get a wide receiver transfer in Mitchell Tinsley that could provide some uplift to this Penn State passing attack now that Jahan Dotson is gone. But you still figure that Washington's going to be that primary target. On the defensive end, you still got talented players like P.J. Mustipher, Nick Tarberton, Curtis Jacobs, Jonathan Sutherland, Joey Porter, Jair Brown, who in the safety position had 6 interceptions last year. So very good stats still all around the board for the talent that's coming back for this Penn State team. And this should be a team that should be improved both on the field and off the field with their record. Or should be a Penn State team that should be much improved. I'll just say that in 2022. But taking a look at this Penn State schedule now, there are definitely some landmines on this schedule, and it starts out with one. The first game of the season on a Thursday against Purdue. That's definitely a landmine of a game. I think Purdue's going to be pretty good this year. I think Aiden O'Connell's the second best quarterback in the Big Ten. That's going to be a tricky game for Penn State. Non-conference slate, you got a couple of MAC opponents in Ohio and Central Michigan, and then on the road against Auburn there as well. That's the non-conference game that stands out to you, and we're going to learn a lot about both of those teams, about both Penn State and Auburn when that game gets played. In terms of the rest of your conference slate, road games against, of course, Purdue, but also Michigan, Indiana, and Rutgers, and home games against Northwestern, Minnesota, Ohio State, Maryland, and Michigan State. So talking about some of these games a little bit. Again, Purdue, very, very tricky game to start out with. That's a very, very tricky game. Oh, might I also mention that Penn State is picking up Manny Diaz to be that defensive coordinator now that Brent Pry has gone to Virginia Tech. So I do feel like I should mention that. But back to the schedule. Purdue, that's a very, very interesting game to start out the season with. Again, that's a game where I feel like Purdue could be a very, very good team and absolutely may very well prove themselves at the end of the year to be the best team in the Big Ten West. As for that Auburn game there in non-conference, that's that's another interesting game right there. Look, that is an Auburn team that, guys, let's face it, we don't know how they're going to play out this year, especially with the coaching situation with Brian Harsin, and how that's all going to play out. But that's still a very, very interesting game, and I think we're going to learn where both of these teams are headed, these teams being Penn State and Auburn, after that game gets played. Penn State probably the more talented team, but playing in Jordan-Hare, I'm going to give Auburn the edge, but we'll definitely see what happens. In your conference slate, besides that Purdue on the road game, you only really have one other super tough road game, and that's going to be on the road against Michigan in the Big House. It's a team coming off a playoff appearance last year, and for what they're losing, they have a lot of experience coming back in a lot of areas. Of course, you lose your 2 best defensive players and pretty much your entire running back room, but that's, at least one key guy in that running back room, their leading rusher, Hassan Haskins from last year. But that's a Michigan team that brings a whole lot back, so they still should be very, very solid, very good football team in 2022. Watch out for that one on the road in the Big House. Other 2 road games, not really that tough, although Rutgers can hang around. And then your home games, Minnesota, Michigan State, Maryland, those are teams that are definitely going to be able to give this Penn State team a fight at home, or theoretically should be able to, but it's the Ohio State game that I think a lot of people and most Penn State fans are going to circle on that schedule, and it has been that game for a very, very long time. I don't do game-by-game predictions. I do a more percentage-based outlook, so if the game's in red, probably not going to win. If the game's in orange, you're still probably not going to win. But hey, it's college football, and upsets can happen. Yellow are your 50-50 high upset potential games. Yellow-green are games that you should probably win. But again, watch out for the team on the other side of the ball. Games in green, might as well book it as a win. So really only 5 games in yellow here, but I'll talk about those in a little bit. they should be able to beat Ohio, Central Michigan, and Northwestern. So at very worst, you get 3 wins in your first 5 games. And I'll talk more about why that might be the case later. But when you look here, Minnesota, Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers, I all have in that yellow-green because while I do think Rutgers on the road could be interesting, while I think Maryland at home, Maryland's going to be an interesting team. Minnesota returns a lot of experience coming back. I think all those teams can give Penn State a fight, but really I just don't think they're more talented teams than Penn State. So I do think Penn State should be able to win all 4 of those games that are in yellow-green there. But again, watch out for those teams like Maryland, Minnesota, and Rutgers. They can sneak up on you. As far as these games in yellow, I've already talked about it. I've already talked about some of them, but Purdue, look, I think Aiden O'Connell's the second best quarterback in the Big Ten. I think that's one of the better wide receiver groups in the Big Ten there as well. That's going to be an interesting game to watch for sure. Again, Auburn, we don't really know what happens there, but I think we're going to learn a lot about both of those teams in that game. And I'm going to lean towards Auburn because it's in Jordan-Hare. Michigan, again, that's a playoff team with a lot of experience in the Big House. That's a hard game to win. But the 2 games I haven't really talked about are Ohio State and Michigan State, and I'll run through them kind of quickly here. But if you're going to look at any of these games in yellow and say, which one is Penn State going to win most likely? I'm going to say it's that home game against Michigan State. I really do think that is the most likely win out of the 5 games in yellow on this Penn State schedule. The other ones, I'm actually going to end up leaning the opposite way. Look, Ohio State figures to be one of the best 2 teams in the country. And yeah, it's going to be the wide-out game. It's going to be loud. It's going to be a very, very fun atmosphere. But Ohio State just projects to be way too good in 2022. And I definitely think that while that game is going to be extremely close, Ohio State might be able to pull it out. So if you guys are following along at home, I got Penn State going 8-4 in 2022, losing every game in yellow besides that Michigan State game at the end of the season. Guys, it is not going to surprise me at all if Penn State is 4-3 through their first. It's not going to surprise me at all if Penn State at one point in the season is 4-4, and we're talking about, oh man, is James Franklin really going to stick around at this Penn State program? And then they win their last 4 games, they get into a solid bowl game, maybe end up with a top 25 ranking at the end of the year. And that's kind of how I'm projecting this Penn State season is going to go. I think we're going to have a lot of questions about this Penn State team. You know, can they really play? Can they really get back to Big Ten contention? But overall, I do feel like they take a step up. I am projecting an 8-4 record here for the Penn State team, floor of 6-6, and a high of 10-2. Because if they put these things together and Sean Clifford can play like his best self all season long, this can be a very, very fun team to watch in 2022. But that's going to do it for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, anything you can. Does mean a lot to me if you help support the channel. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.